The clip you're about to watch is a conversation with Dennis Prager, Jordan Peterson, Oz Guinness, Jonathan Peugeot. I have to admit, I'm very, very surprised by this take that Dennis Prager has. I'm going to provide a few quotes from C.S. Lewis at the end of this video that I think do a fantastic job of explaining the problem with Dennis Prager's take. But let's go ahead and dive into it.
I am less interested in the interior person, morally speaking, than you are. And probably any of you are, and it's largely, I do believe, because I come from a behaviorist, law-based religion. We care how you act. That's why we don't have a claim that if you look at another woman with lust, it's as if you've committed adultery with her. I am, as I said yesterday, I thank God for America's Christians. And Maimonides said if it weren't for Christians, the world wouldn't know about the Torah. So I'm a big Christian fan. But obviously Christianity and Judaism are not identical religions. And we have no equivalent that if you look upon another woman with lust, it's as if you have committed adultery with your heart. There's only one way to commit adultery in Judaism, and it's with a different organ. And I'm not being cute, I'm being very realistic. Looking with lust is not a sin in Judaism.
So let me pause really quick here, because the first question that's asked is lust adultery? Which is actually a different question than is lust problematic or is lust, bad in any way. So Jordan Peterson is going to push back, but I want to draw that distinction.
What's the stance on pornography? So
pornography, when I'm asked this question,
just to put you on the spot.
You did indeed. Okay, so my answer when it's raised on my radio show, I have a male-female hour, and I'm very open about sexual subjects. I always ask if a wife calls me and says, my husband looks at pornography, I found on his computer, I have one question. How is your life of intimacy with your husband? Is it good? In other words, is the pornography in lieu of you or in addition to you? Mm-hmm. And I know this is not a religious answer, and mm-hmm. I'm not even giving a religious answer. I'm giving mm-hmm. what I think is a moral and realistic answer. Men want variety. And if adultery is a substitute for, if pornography is a substitute for one's wife, it's awful. If it's a substitute for adultery, it's not awful.
How about a third option of mortify the flesh? Don't give in to that. Don't water that seed. That he's right in the sense that there's a connection between lust and adultery. But if the goal is to avoid adultery, why would you permit lust since they are so interconnected?
That is my unpredictable answer.
Well, there is a clinical rule of thumb that's akin to that, I would say. If you're trying to decide clinically whether someone's partaking in a habit, say use of alcohol, has reached the threshold of clinical significance, one of the things you do is ask the person you're assessing, is it interfering with your employment? Has it got you in trouble with the law? Is your family complaining? Does it stop you from doing other things that you should be doing? And so the judgment isn't the use of the forbidden substance itself. It is in some sense consequentialist. And I'm not saying that that's an absolute, but it is a hallmark of clinical judgment.
But Dennis, you're making, I think, too big a gap between, behavior and where it comes from. And surely the 10th commandment is exactly that. You could expound everything Jesus said from thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife, or another woman you're not whatever. Mm-hmm.
Well,
the whole point of coveting, it begins in the heart. And I understand your Hebrew word for covet is a desire doesn't stop halfway.
Right, to take.
It takes action.
It's to take.
Yeah.
It's not, there's no ban in the 613 laws of the Torah on lusting. I don't even know there's a ta'ava is the closest you could get to lust in Hebrew. But yeah.
Okay, so let me ask you about that.
The covet is critical. I can be attracted to my neighbor's wife. I can't want her. There's a difference because but what about a single woman? I asked one of the great Protestant thinkers of our generation in a public debate in Phoenix. I asked them, so can a single Christian male look upon a single woman with lust? He can't be committing adultery. He's not married and she's not married. So is the real ban lust or is the ban on adultery?
Okay, so now he's very explicit, where at the start it sounded like it was not totally clear what we're talking about. Let me go ahead, as I promised, and pull up 2 quotes from C.S. Lewis here that I think are just perfect. For me, the real evil of masturbation would be that it takes an appetite which, in lawful use, leads the individual out of himself to complete and correct his own personality and that of another. And finally, in children and even grandchildren, and turns it back, sends the man back into the prison of himself, there to keep a harem of imaginary brides. And this harem, once admitted, works against his ever getting out and really uniting with a real woman. For the harem is always accessible, always subservient, calls for no sacrifices or adjustments, and can be endowed with erotic and psychological attractions which no woman can rival. Among those shadowy brides he is always adored, always the perfect lover. No demand is made on his unselfishness, no mortification ever imposed on his vanity. In the end, they become merely the medium through which he increasingly adores himself. After all, almost the main work of life is to come out of ourselves, out of the little dark prison we are all born in. Masturbation is to be avoided, as all things are to be avoided which retard this process. The danger is that of coming to love the prison. And I think that is so deep and so profound and gets to the heart of the problem with lust, not just the behavioral working out of it, but how it affects the person themselves. Here's another one. Last one. Lust is a poor, weak, whimpering, whispering thing compared with that richness and energy of desire which will arise when lust has been killed. And so you see in both of these quotes that Lewis is creating a dichotomy between lust and the good life, basically, between selfishness and control of self towards the end of giving to others and unifying with a real person in the real world. Lewis's understanding here goes a layer deeper than just behavior. I'm honestly really surprised that Dennis Prager cannot see the spiritual damage of lust. My last thought is that this is an example of what can go wrong when you discredit the teachings of Jesus, basically. When you say, yeah, that guy told us that actually adultery begins in the heart, but he didn't know what he was talking about. He was just a revolutionary. He didn't have any authority. And I think that when you try to separate Jesus from the authority that he had, you run the risk of very bizarre takes on very important issues like this one. That being said, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thanks for putting up with my voice. I'm, if you can't tell, a bit under the weather, but I wanted to tackle this topic while it was fresh on the internet. And like, subscribe, all the things. I'll see you guys in the next video.